Hello, this is Artemis_anime, and today I am reading Viridian by Silver Mist Anime Lover, Chapter 22, Hosu. Snipe was just making himself some tea. The sharpshooter was fast asleep on the couch, enough so that he could drape a soft blanket over the kid and not wake him up. He thought it was a tad unusual, what with how jumpy and guarded Midoriya always was, but perhaps he simply was that tired. He hardly seemed to rest after all, and Yuka and Tsukaku had told him that the kid often had nightmares. The rest of the staff had taken to making sure someone was up and downstairs during the night in case he had one, so he wouldn't be alone. Not that most of them weren't insomniac anyways, though not to the extent of Aizawa. A quiet thump drew his attention to the kid, who'd rolled right off the couch and was now staring at the carpet in detached confusion. There was something off to the expression on the kid's face, and Snipe quietly sat down his cup. Midoriya? The kid's head whipped up, and Snipe felt like his breath catch in his throat. He'd seen that look on Midoriya's face when he was stuck in that mild flashback after the hot springs. He always had a jaded and bitter look in his eye that came with seeing too much and losing too many. But never had he seen his eyes so unguarded. They were raw with loss and hardened by pain, like chips of icy jade that were sharply analyzed everything around him. Every muscle was tensed, and Snipe was certain that he could attack at the drop of a coin. In that moment, for the first time, Snipe didn't see Viridian the hero, or even Midoriya the student. He saw Izuku, the survivor, the man who'd lost far too much. Then Midoriya blinked and gave a shuddering sigh, and Snipe watched in morbid fascination as the emotional barriers went up around the kid's eyes. Again, the bitterness in his voice as he whispered the word to himself startled Snipe. Midoriya? He tried again, taking a cautious step forward. He tried to ignore the small instinct inside of him that was mildly afraid of the hero before him, because this was Midoriya. But some part of himself still recognized this kid as dangerous. Sorry if I startled you, just give me a minute to orient myself. He climbed to his feet and sat back on the couch before running a hand over. Had that injury been there before? Snipe certainly didn't remember it being there. Are you okay? It was a pointless question. They both knew he wasn't. But he couldn't think of anything else to say. Not really. He gave a breathy laugh. Damn it, my notes are back at UA. Shall we head back? Snipe frowned lightly. He may not have understood what Midoriya was talking about, but if the kid thought these notes were important, then he'd trust him at his word. No, he shook his head quickly. Hosu's much more important than whatever this thing is. He eyed the gash on his arm with a light scowl, and now that he was closer, Snipe got a good look at it. It was deep, alarmingly so, and it seemed mildly infected around the edges. It looked like claw marks, but he didn't understand how he could have missed that earlier. Sure, their patrol had been eventful, but he certainly didn't recall Midoriya getting hurt. Moreover, they didn't even fight anyone with claws. He quickly pulled out his first aid kit. I'm sure you didn't have that an hour ago. Midoriya sighed. No, I didn't. This was from an encounter with the Nomu in the future. I don't understand why, but sometimes I get these downloads? Overlaps? Sometimes I just wake up back in the first run, and when I come back here, I still have the injuries or scars my other self has obtained in the meantime. Snipe stared for a long moment, trying to wrap his brain around the utter confusion that was pouring from the time traveler's mouth. Don't quite think I got that. There's not much point in trying to explain something I don't even understand myself. Midoriya shook his head. There was an encounter with a white Nomu. I got lucky this was just a scratch. That's a... Snipe stared at the claw marks. Under normal circumstances, he'd say that it needed stitches. But Aizawa had warned him of Midoriya's aversion to hospitals and clinics, so he did the best he could. Recovery Girl could fix him up after their work in Hosu was done. It was certainly more than a scratch, though. Anyways, how long was I out for? The kid started to sound much more like himself. Or the version that Snipe was familiar with, at least. Not long, maybe an hour or so. Jeez, you'd think I'd have managed to at least snag a little sleep, he huffed, scrubbing a hand over his face as he glanced at the clock. It was only just past noon. Got any coffee? Snipe was about to answer when both of their phones buzzed.
Midnight. Guys, Endeavor's on the move. Got a ticket to Hosu. He's getting on the train with Todoroki now.
Well, I guess this is it. Midoriya stretched as he typed away on his phone.
Viridian chaos. This is the moment, guys. Snipe and I are heading over to Tail Ida. Eraser, you coming? Dad Sawa. Yeah, I'll go tell Shinzo he's got a day to rest. Kid's been doing a pretty good job so far. Lots of drive. Scream. Ooh, is that a compliment I hear? Evil genius. Stay focused, everyone. Don't forget those comms I sent you. I'll keep a GPS surveillance on you as best as I can. Furry. Samugre is on Hosu now. I doubt I'll be able to make it in time, but I'll try to catch a train as well. Viridian Chaos. If you can't make it, don't sweat it. Snipe and I will handle Satan, but be prepared for some action downtown. I can't remember what happened, but I know a lot of people got hurt. 13. Thanks for the heads up. I'm already in Hosu with ectoplasm, so the two of us will try to stick to the general downtown area. I am here. I still have some hero time today. I'll stay in the area as well, just in case I'm needed. Viridian Chaos. Thanks, everyone. Please stay safe. Mother Hen. Don't leave me out of this. I'll tell Ida with you guys.
Midoriya gave a large, almost feral grin. Well, Snipe, are you ready? He grabbed his Viridian costume. Let's go. Shinzo Hitoshi wasn't sure what to make of his sudden day off. Aizawa had stated that an urgent mission came up from Viridian and that it was too dangerous to take an internal hop. He could understand that, and appreciated the fact that he'd told him rather than just running off. But now he was left with a whole day and no idea what to do. He pulled out his phone out of boredom and blinked at the small slip of paper sticking out from his phone case. He smiled when he saw Mei's address written in hardly legible handwriting and recalled the girl shoving the hastily scribbled information into his hands before whirling around to storm her lab at the school. She'd said he could drop by whenever.
Hitoshi. Hey, I've got a sudden free day. Mind if we hang out for a bit?
Was that how people asked friends to hang out? He wasn't sure. He'd never had friends before.
Mei. Sure, you coming to my place or should I catch a train to yours? Hitoshi. Now I'll come to your place. I still got some travel money from the internship fund.
Hitoshi grinned as he scribbled down a note for Aizawa in case the hero got back first. The train ticket wasn't too expensive, and he found himself a little giddy in excitement. He felt almost rebellious doing this, going to a whole different city to hang out with a friend. The whole train ride was both too long and incredibly short. Hitoshi couldn't help but the grin that spread across his face when he saw a familiar head of pink hair waving at him. Toshi! Mei! He turtled it over towards her. Mei, ever the exuberant one, greeted him with a warm hug. He flinched lightly, unused to the physical contact, but relaxed after a moment. It was something the three of them had in common. None of them had much social experience of the positive sort. Mei was always ostracized from her peers due to her explosive inventions and higher intelligence. Hitoshi was jeered at and bullied because of his villainous quirk. Izuku was isolated and sneered at for his lack of a quirk. The three were a trio of social misfits, but they seemed to click together well enough anyways. Hitoshi couldn't help but notice the way Izuku avoided their peers. It made him feel special that he'd let the purple-haired hero hopeful into his life in the way he did. He greatly valued Izuku's friendship and was eternally grateful for that horrific train wreck that introduced them. Come on! Mei grabbed his wrist. You must be hungry, let's grab some food. I know some great restaurants around here. Slow down, I've never been here before. He laughed a bit. Oh? Mei smirked. Then welcome to Hosu. Viridian scowled as he watched Ida run around the city. It been hours since Endeavor had arrived, and he was getting tired of waiting around. Considering all the shit you put Tsukuuchi and I through, I think you can handle a little boredom, Eraserhead smirked, earning a brief glare from the green-clad hero. Oh, do tell. Snipe smirked as Kaigo cackled a bit. We are on a mission, you know, Viridian reminded them. There was something wrong. Something was off, he could sense it. The light of the setting sun was stretching across the shadows of the city. Any moment now, the commotion downtown would kick up, and Ida would run towards what would undoubtedly be his death if they weren't fast enough. The feeling of wrongness increased tenfold as Izuku shared a glance with Dabi and quipped whatever Shigaraki was up to, it wasn't anything good. Izuku barely had time to register the loud vibrating hum that permeated the air as like 1,000 hummingbirds. It made his eardrums itch as he turned from his spot in the rafters to stare in abject horror at a massive explosion snapped Izuku out of whatever that was. Was that a memory download from the first run? Why had it happened so suddenly? It felt distinctly different from all the other ones, like a flashback. Come on, Kaigo shot him a look, and Viridian shook his head. We've already lost track of him, but I should be able to find him from the skies. Damn, that kid is fast. He had no time to contemplate this. Whatever niggling questions or thoughts his mind had would have to wait. He couldn't afford to be distracted during this. He fought the urge to head towards the commotion downtown. The others could handle it. They had already been warned, so they likely wouldn't need his help. Instead, he turned his full attention towards Ida's issue, mentally cursing the child for his impulsive actions. The sight they came upon was not one Viridian had expected to see, and he could hear Eraserhead's sharp intake of breath. Ida was already on the ground and bleeding, but thankfully alive. Between him and Stain was Hitoshi and Mei. Though the support course student looked scared out of her mind and was trying to stem Ida's bleeding. Viridian? 13's hesitant voice sounded over the earpiece Nezu had given them. Remember that commotion you warned us about? Would have been nice to know it wasn't a Nomu we'd be facing, Ectoplasm grunted. What? Viridian's eyes widened. Has the Nomu really attacked so early on? How could he have forgotten that? What do they look like? Similar to the one from the USJ, All Might panted a bit. Much weaker, though. Endeavor and I should be able to handle things. Kaigo, you should go help them. Viridian shot his brother a look. You and I have sparred enough times that I trust you to handle a Nomu. They sound like all for one Nomu, so you should be fine. Kaigo scowled but nodded. Be careful, Zukun. He took off into the skies, heading towards the smoke that billowed into the sky. Change of plans, Viridian scowled. Hitoshi and Mei were not part of his plan. He had to improvise a bit. I'll take Stain, you protect the students. He didn't wait for a reply as he leapt down from the rooftop as Stain moved to attack Hitoshi. The kid was brave, he'd give him that, but there was no way he could survive an encounter with Stain as he was now. Even Hitoshi seemed to know that, because he glared defiantly at the hero. Killer. Clang! Viridian's blade blocked Stain's just in time. The hero killer's eyes widened. Well now, you weren't a face I expected to see again. He backed off for a moment. I'm not after you, Viridian. You're one of the few I approve of. A true hero. But if you stand in my way, I won't hesitate to cut you down. I think we both know the answer to that. Viridian adjusted his stance. Shinzo, get Hatsume and Ida out of here, he ordered. Don't worry, he sent them a confident smirk. I'll protect you. I don't think so. Stain grinned as he licked one of his knives, and Hitoshi went down like a puppet with his strings cut. If you truly wish to fight me, then fight me. Viridian blocked the blade that came out of him with a speed that rivaled the Dark Nomu. It was no wonder the other heroes struggled against Stain. Without his apocalypse training, he likely wouldn't stand much chance either. He felt a smirk grace his lip, but a fighter like Stain would rely on a quick hit. He only needed blood to kill his foe. Sneak attacks and quick strikes would be his style. Despite the fact that Stain had quite the power behind his blows, Viridian was fairly confident that his stamina was nowhere near Viridian's own. He locked blades with Stain swiftly blocking a strike the man made with a small knife using one of his sai. Stain gave him a grin as they separated and clashed again. Stain threw one of his blades, forcing Viridian to catch it by the handle, a skill he wasn't even sure he had, lest it hit the students behind him. Stain didn't give him a moment to breathe as he rushed in before Viridian had even caught the knife, forcing him to use that knife to block the oncoming attack. He crossed the knife with the sword, forming an X to stop the attack of the killer. Stain let out a booming laugh as Viridian lashed out a kick, pushing the killer back. "You are far more formidable than I remember." A feral grin spread across Stain's face. "I can feel the honesty in your blade. Your strikes are clean and pure." "I wouldn't call myself that." He scoffed under his breath, remembering the people he'd killed throughout his life. Not all of them had deserved it. Stain rushed in, and Viridian couldn't catch the second knife that buried itself in his shoulder. He did spin away before Stain could retrieve it. "And yours are strong and fearsome. I'll agree with you on the stance. The system is corrupted, but it's not your place to kill those who have fallen victim to it." "Same seed, different flowers." Stain grinned. They separated for a moment and all was still. "But just like last time, you're going to fail." Then, as Stain leapt back into action, a gunshot rang out. The hero killer staggered, a look of shock painting his features as the knife in his hand clattered to the ground. "That's the thing," Viridian spoke quietly. "I didn't come alone." "You good, Viridian?" Eraserhead asked as he leapt down from the rooftop. "Just a stab wound," he shrugged. "Just a stab wound, he says." Snipe shook his head. Aizawa-sensei." Hitoshi let out a sigh of relief. And Viridian, thank you." "What are you doing here?" Eraserhead shot him a glare. I was hanging out with Mei, and we heard a commotion as we were passing by, and saving people thing kicked in," Mei finished for him. "Honestly, I'm surrounded by problem children," Eraser groaned, causing Viridian to laugh. "Come now, Shao, you know you love them." He grinned as he casually removed the knife from his shoulder. "Hey, you weren't supposed to just rip it out." Snipe glared from where he was securing Stain. "It's just how he is." Aizawa shook his head. "Honestly, his survival is unreal." Snipe sighed. "I'm right here," Viridian scowled. He glanced up when he heard a group of people approaching. It looked like a small ragtag group of minor heroes. "Is that Viridian?" one of them asked, wide eyes. "Holy crap, is that the hero killer?" another asked, pointing to Stain. Snipe's shot hadn't killed him, but the bullet had contained a rather poignant sedative. Despite this, Eraserhead was still securing him. Better safe than sorry. A familiar figure headed a group of officers that joined them. "Kenji!" Viridian beamed, and the chief gave him a grin. "Viridian, I didn't expect to run into you in Hosu." He eyed Stain with something akin to recognition, like he'd gotten so used to Viridian's unique brand of chaos that something like catching Stain wasn't even worth being surprised over. "I see you're back at it." Snipe was the one who took him down. "I just gave him the opening." Viridian shook his head. "Don't be so modest." Snipe shot him a look. "You would have beat him yourself if you knew the way you ran that battle. He was losing and you know it." "But I would have had a lot more trouble if you hadn't been there," Viridian denied. "At any rate, I'm just glad nobody's dead." He eyed the kids that had been caught up in this mess. "Though it looks like some medical treatment is required." "For you too." Eraserhead shot him a pointed look, zeroing in on his shoulder. "And you aren't getting out of it." Kenji folded his arms across his chest. "Gosh, you make it sound like I've got an injury or something." Viridian rolled his eyes. "You do," Snipe replied. "I don't know how much you can think a knife to the shoulder and think it's a scratch." I've had worse," Viridian shrugged. "Come on, let's head out to... Eraserhead's voice was cut off as their earpieces crackled to life. "Ack! Watch out!" 13's voice sounded over the comms. "At least one Nomu has managed to fly away and it's headed in your direction, and it's a flying one." That was all the warning Viridian got before his gut started screaming at him. He shoved Hitoshi out of the way, biting his lip as the claws dug into his shoulder. For a moment he thought he'd been picked up by a swarm of yellow Nomu, but it was one rather slow, clunky, dark-colored Nomu. It wouldn't be that difficult to steal, but landing safely was a bit of a different matter. Oh well, he'd figure something out. But before the Viridian had the chance to bury his blade into the Nomu, someone else did so for him. Arms wrapped around him, helping to soften the blow as they hit the pavement. Viridian stared in shock at the person who saved him. Not that he needed saving, mind. Stain stood almost protectively before him, snarling at the police that had gathered, his eyes locked on Endeavor, who had likely been chased after the Nomu in his rage became something nearly solid. You fakes. Stain straightened up despite the blood flowing from the bullet wound and the numerous injuries from Viridian. The quirkless hero had to admit the hero killer had a certain commanding aura. His bloodlust blackened the streets like a mist, and his raw, determined, and conviction was nearly solid. The very air became heavy, and nobody could tear their gaze from him. With the moon rising at his back, he looked like a crimson demon who had clawed his way up from hell to carry out his personal brand of justice. Come, try to get me, you fakes, all you worship money who carry the title of heroes. You are the true disease of this society. Only two that I have judged to be true heroes, and only they can kill me. I will let no one else do so. Only All Might and Viridian can kill me, so come and try me, you fakes. He took another step forward, his presence magnifying with his declaration, only for everything to come to an abrupt standstill. The air suddenly became light again, and even Endeavor stared in disbelief. Stain had fallen unconscious where he stood, refusing to bow to the fakes even when his body failed him. Is it over? Hitoshi asked softly, trembling like a leaf. Viridian pulled out the quirk suppression cuffs he'd stole from Namasa months ago and put them on Stain. I think so, Mei shakily answered. Poor girl was hardly able to stand. Haguri wasn't going to be happy with Viridian if she ended up traumatized from this. Viridian quickly and quietly handed off Stain to the cops, and Ida was loaded into the ambulance. The paramedics were trying to coax Viridian into another one when the airpiece crackled again. Guys? Kaiga's voice was labored with pain, setting Viridian's instincts ablaze. We need some serious backup, like ASAP. Viridian's gut did a backflip as he took off with a run. Snipe and Eraser were hot on his heels, and it seemed Hitoshi and Mei felt more comfortable following them into danger than staying behind with Endeavor. Not that Viridian necessarily blamed them, but he'd rather not put his friends in harm's way. Whatever it was that Kaigo was struggling with was bound to be dangerous. What's the situation, Hawks? Eraser had asked, voice crackling through Nezu's earpiece. We aren't sure, Kaigo's voice shook lightly. Whoever it was he was facing had him scared. 2 heroes dead. I could hardly see it. Viridian shared a glance with Eraserhead and Snipe. This wasn't a good situation by a long shot. 2 heroes dead? And if Kaigo couldn't even see what was happening. They were near enough to the commotion for Viridian to spot the scene. Corpses of Nomus burned by Endeavor, who was still with the police, and Stain, were strewn everywhere. All Might's handiwork was evident there as well, though the man was nowhere to be seen. 13 was likely off helping with the rescue efforts with ectoplasm. Kaigo had his back against one wall, eyes darting around the shadowy alleyways like he was trying to spot a predator. 2 dead heroes were strewn about them. Something about the wounds tickled the back of Viridian's mind. Kaigo was badly hurt, and one wing hung at an awkward angle, and deep claw marks and marring feathers. Crimson blood dripped into a steadily growing puddle beneath his wings, and Viridian felt a spike of anxiety. Eraser had spared Hitoshi and Mei a sharp glance. Stay here. The 2 kids quickly nodded their heads as Eraser had cautiously made his way over to Kaigo. Every instinct was on overdrive. A slight movement drew Viridian's gaze towards an alleyway across the clearing. His eyes widened in disbelief when he saw a familiar form lurking in the shadows. There was no way. What is that? Dabi whispered to him in disbelief. A portal. Izuku choked out. He couldn't believe his eyes. The runes were carefully etched into the edge of the archway that glowed an angry red, a stark difference to the calming blues and whites that had accompanied Project Hope. But how? I took all the notes with me. Beautiful, isn't it? Shigaraki's voice echoed the empty room. I know you're there. You inspired me that day. Thanks to the little quirk I picked up, I was able to understand enough to know what you did. A portal to the past, huh? Yours was incomplete. I have gathered the brightest minds left in the world to make this for me. Shigaraki turned towards their hiding spot and naturally grinned as something entered that portal. Round 2, Midoriya Izuku. Viridian didn't waste a moment to process the information he just received from the first run. As he ran towards Kaigo and Eraserhead, he grit his teeth as the claws met his sword and the beast let out a horrifyingly familiar roar that stared at him with wide, horrified eyes. Kaigo, run! What? But you can't fight this, Viridian spat out, slashing with his blades as he dodged a tail swipe. If he was being honest, Izuku had enough trouble fighting these fuckers back in the first run. His younger second run self was not only slower, but injured. There was a very low chance he would survive at all, but he had to protect them. Eraser was already guiding Kaigo towards Snipe and the kids, while Viridian distracted the white Nomu. The once vigilante dotted the fangs and blocked the claw swipe. But the second swipe from the other set of claws sent him flying back into a wall near Snipe and the kids. He turned to spit the blood out of his mouth, only realizing belatedly that his mask had torn. Izuku? Hitoshi's eyes were wide, and Mei looked ready to faint from the information overload. We'll back you up, Snape promised, cocking his gun. Tell us how to fight this. Eraserhead glared at the Nomu. Viridian grit his teeth as he forced his feet. There was no time to think. He had to go with his gut. Slow it down. It can't see, so it relies on sound and movement. It's a speed fighter. He lunged to the side. The claws missed his face by inches, and he sacrificed the knife he'd stolen from Stain to shove it into the creature's back left leg. It roared in pain as it whipped its tail around him, wrapping the tip around his leg and flinging him into a nearby building. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth, and he half wondered how angry Higakure was going to be at the state of his mask. It was in tatters now. Viridian, Shota called out, throwing out his capture weapon to slow the Nomu, who instantly rounded on the underground hero. Viridian staggered to his feet with a determined gleam in his eyes, tightening his grip on his blade as he threw himself back into the fight, cutting Shota's capture weapon before the Nomu could pull Shota towards that. I'm fine. Don't tell me you were worried about little old me. He chuckled as he narrowly avoided another swipe of its claws. A shot from Snipe had the Nomu off balance enough for Viridian to get a solid blow to one of its back legs, slowing it down significantly. Not the times for jokes, Azu. Kaigo glared from where he was standing with Mei and Hitoshi, likely doing his best to protect them and keeping them out of trouble. Viridian winced when the whip-like tail wrapped itself around his ankle, and he quickly slashed it with his sword through the tail to free himself. A sudden thought popped into his mind as his blade missed the Nomu's eyes by a half-inch. Hey Kai, you still have those gadgets I gave you? Yeah. Kaiko fished a few out, and Viridian grinned. Toss the green one here. Mai's eyes lit up. The sound, baby! Let's just hope it doesn't knock us all out. He grimaced as he caught the device. It looked like a small, round battery pack. Everyone cover your ears, he warned as he pointed it towards the Nomu, who had its attention turned towards him at the yell. It snarled viciously as it lunged, powerful black legs catapulting it forward like the stuff of his nightmares. If this didn't work, he'd be lucky to only lose one limb. He uncapped the device, and a very, very loud, high-pitched ringing emanated from it, shooting the sound almost visibly towards the Nomu. The creature cried out in agony as it staggered on its feet, but it didn't fall. It still struggled, trying to move away from whatever the awful noise was. Viridian's own ears were starting to hurt as he ran at the beast and shoved the sword in its brain. He quickly captured the knockout device as he glanced around, wary of any more first-run Nomu coming to join the party. After a full minute of still silence, he finally let his legs give out. He landed with a heavy thump in a sitting position on the corpse of a white Nomu. Viridian. Shota was by his side a moment later. He also looked bloodied and was sporting a nice slash on his arm, but other than that, he seemed okay. Everyone alive? He set Kaiko, Snipe, and Shota a bloodied smile. Congratulations on surviving your first encounter with the white Nomu. Something from the first run. First run? Kaiko echoed as Snipe steadied him. But I thought... I'll explain later, Viridian sighed. I need reference some notes back at UA. Izuku? Hitoshi spoke up hesitantly with wide eyes. Viridian winced. I'll explain it later. We'll hold you to it, Greenie, Mei nodded. She looked pale, but neither of them seemed hurt from the Nomu encounter. Her show? Viridian let his gaze drift towards the erasure hero. Just this once. I'll say it's okay to take me to a hospital. Shota snorted. You had no choice to begin with, problem child. And that was chapter 22, Hosu of Viridian by Silver Mist Anime Lover. We only have one more chapter, and we finally have a whole bunch of fics for me to read. You can go and check them out. I posted them and what they are. I have a whole bunch of permissions now. I hope you guys enjoyed. I will see you next week. Bye!